Week 1 is over. Now, we have a little evidence of how good, or maybe how bad, your favorite NFL team truly is. Welcome, football fans, to the best power rankings on the internet. Mitch, what makes your power rankings better than everyone else's? First of all, I'm not a jabroni. And if you're not a jabroni, you know what to do. I don't even need to say it. But second, I give you the honest truth. I give you the brutal truth of how good or bad your favorite team is, how they played in week 1, and what I actually think of them. I'm not playing both sides. I'm giving you my honest opinion. And there just aren't a lot of people that actually do that. So, let's break down, let's rank every NFL team from the worst, number 32, to the best, number 1, the best team in the NFL entering week 2. If that sounds good, spike that like button, and don't be a jabroni. Subscribe. Okay, let me know in the comments who's too high, who's too low, who's just right, and where you disagree. Let's kick it off with the worst team in the NFL entering week 2. That team is the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints are still the worst team. I understand they played half decent. They competed with the Cardinals. But nobody thought at any time they were actually going to win the damn game. Did anyone watch that game and say, well, first of all, did anyone watch the game? Period. But then second, okay, did anyone watch the game and say, yeah, the Saints are going to win this thing? I have a feeling. You know, Spencer Rattler, he's really going to rev it up and they're going to win it. No. Not at one moment did I think, did you think, did any one of you jabronis think that the New Orleans Saints were going to win the game? Okay? So that's first of all. How do you meet the criteria of being the worst team in football? You give zero confidence that you're ever going to win a game, even against Kyler Murray when he's sick. Sure, the Saints stopped James Conner pretty well. Sure, the Saints, it didn't look too bad. I thought Kellen Moore, he deserves some credit for actually making this team look like an NFL squad, considering the talent. Give him a little credit. That's a good debut for this absolutely disastrous roster. Okay? Can I just ask one thing? To all Saints fans, to Spencer Rattler, to his future quarterbacks, can we please allow Chris Olave to survive? Like, can we stop throwing this man hospital balls, like getting him absolutely wrecked every single game? Like, can you just let the guy live? Jawan Johnson, PPR scam, 11 receptions. What? Was it 11 receptions? No, 11 targets, I believe. Maybe 8 receptions. Either way, it felt like 11. The defense sucks. At no point did I feel like the Cardinals were not going to move the ball and score when they really needed to. So, yeah, the Saints suck. We know this. But do I have to keep going? Next. Who do we have next? At number 31, the Carolina Panthers. Boy, am I pissed about the Panthers. Because I'm going to Arizona this week. Just a heads up. Just so you guys know. I'm going to Arizona, and I am watching the Carolina Panthers play football. I don't know why. It's not the main reason I'm actually going to Arizona. But I am catching the game on Sunday, okay? It's also close for me. It's easy to go to Arizona. We know people in Arizona. But Cardinals, Panthers. We've got the Short King Bowl. Kyler Murray on one side, Bryce Young on the other side. Boy, Bryce, what are you doing, pal? There were some egregious mistakes by Bryce. His first interception, what in the blue hell are you doing? Your fumble, protect the ball, brother. Now, I will say the fumble was actually really nice by Aluakon, and the interception was also forced by Aluakon, but the interception was quite bad. I'm not going to lie. And also, why are you throwing the ball out of the end zone on 4th down? But I will say that the Panthers actually were more in that game than the score suggests. The offense looked a lot like last year. Like, they were moving the ball, and then they would go for it on 4th down, and they wouldn't get it. They would fumble. They would throw a pick. Something bad would happen for them to not get points. But I actually felt like they were in that game a lot more than it would assume. Their defense still looked pretty bad, especially against the run. J.C. Horn had an incredible interception. I will say that. But the defense still looks like a disaster. Like, no pass rush, no fight against the run, right? Early on, maybe a little, but the Jags did whatever they wanted. The tackling was terrible, right? At least they kept a cap on the top receiving targets of the Jags, but I mean, other than that, it was a pretty big 2024 performance from the Panthers, right? And I think, the biggest fault here, the biggest downside of the performance is that Bryce, while I felt like he played with confidence and he played with that swagger he had last year, he made a lot of bad decisions in critical moments, which really did lose them the game and really didn't allow them to win the game, more importantly, okay? So we'll see how they look against the Cardinals. I think they're better than they played in week 1, but they're still bad. And they definitely have the worst defense in football. So I have them at number 31. At number 30, the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins. I don't know if I'm going to make it through this video. I might have to spend the entire rest of the video talking about the Miami Dolphins. Oh my. Where do I even start? Where do I even start with the Miami Dolphins? I can't even sing the theme song. It's so depressing. I feel bad. How can I even sing it? Okay, all I got to say about the Miami Dolphins is, how do you let a guy pick you off and then do whatever the hell Cam Bynum did in the end zone? Like, what was that? How do you have respect for yourself allowing Cam Bynum to pick Tua Tagovailoa? Sorry, I said his name wrong. Tua turned the ball over. You pick him off. You run to the end zone, and then whatever that was, dude. How do you not start a brawl on site? Like, what? Speaks to Miami's lack of toughness, lack of physicality. Tyreek Hill in the headlines again for reasons that, wow, I could have predicted. Not gonna lie. Jalen Waddle, what do you know? Oh, he's already hurt. The offensive line sucks so bad, they signed Cole Strange. They can't block a soul. They got embarrassed. Tua is blind, bro. They take away his first read. He just hucks the ball to the other team. He looked like a CFLer out there. My goodness, he was terrible. On defense, they have 1,000-year-old slow-ass Matt Judon playing. Like, what are we doing? Their secondary is absolute shit. I mean, like, it is garbage. Like, the definition of trash. The Miami Dolphins might be the worst team in the league. I'm just not fully willing to commit to it yet. But when you get to Indianapolis and you get laid the F out by Indiana Jones, I mean, my goodness. The Colts looked like the damn prime Peyton Manning Colts. Like, it was bad, bro. The Dolphins were the most embarrassing team in week 1 by a long, wide margin. A wide margin. So the Miami Dolphins are at number 30. At number 29, the New York Giants. The Giants are lucky that the Miami Dolphins exist. Was there a fan base that more egregiously, for no reason whatsoever, believed in their team this year than the New York Giants? Okay, maybe I just know this because I'm a little bit closer to Giants fans now because I work for the Bleacher Report and I do videos and content for them. So there's a lot of Giants fans there, okay? These fans, I mean, they had their head so far up their ass, it's really hard to even explain. I don't know if they can actually see, okay? Russell Wilson is so washed, it's unbelievable. I have never seen a quarterback more washed in my entire life than Russell Wilson. I felt decent about taking the 6.5 with the Giants. Because I'm like, yeah, I think their defense going to do a good job. What do you look at the box score? The Giants hold them to 21 points. They must have covered, right? They must have scored 17 against a bottom 5 freaking defense. No! They scored 6 fucking points. Yeah. Russell Wilson, you suck. And then the offensive line sucks. And then the receivers are overrated. And then the defense, you still gave up freaking 500 yards or whatever, 430. Like, what? Egregious. Like, terrible. The Giants, put in Jameis. Give us some entertainment. I'm already there, bro. I'm already there. Yeah, I know Jackson Dart's going to start. Jameis isn't going to see the field. It's unfortunate because that's the only way this team's going to be entertaining, dude. Jackson Dart's not saving the day. I'm sorry. Next, the Tennessee Titans. The Titans were an interesting case in week 1 because they played a team. They were the biggest underdogs of the week, tied with the Cowboys, 8.5. But I would argue that they were the biggest underdogs because I think out of all the survivor picks, Broncos were probably the most common as well. And the Tennessee Titans went on the road with a rookie quarterback to Denver against a premier defense, and they almost won the game. Like, they scared the shit out of me. I had the Broncos in my survivors. I bet the Broncos in numerous ways, including halftime, full-time, which was actually my Patreon Money Mitch pick of the week, 1-0. But that was kind of fortunate because the Titans were winning until like a minute left in halftime. The Broncos, they didn't look like the contender. They didn't look like the AFC West best in the West that everybody was saying, Colin. They weren't saying, they weren't looking like that. They were looking like some scrub-ass team because Jeffrey Simmons was just absolutely wrecking the offensive line. The offensive line of the Broncos that everyone's like, oh, it's the best in the league. It's as good as the Eagles. Yeah, my ass. Okay. Bo Nix, I know this is the Titans segment, but Bo Nix looked terrified. The Titans had him terrified out there. Roger McCreary was picking off passes. Brownlee was locking dudes up. They had old-ass safeties like Quandre Diggs flying around. The Titans looked really good on defense in this game. They played their asses off, man. If not for giving up a couple explosives to Cortland Sutton and a couple runs, I mean, they might have won the game. On the other side, I feel bad for Cam Ward. I will say, Titans fans, you have a quarterback, but you don't have a coach. Your coach is a candy ass. Your coach sucks, dude. Your coach sucks. His offensive design sucks. His lack of understanding of the rule book. Imagine being paid $10 million or whatever he's being paid. I don't know. We don't know how much these coaches are being paid. But imagine being paid $10 million to coach an NFL team and you don't know the damn rules. Bro, read the rule book. How hard is it? You're being paid $10 million freaking dollars. You have Cam Ward. You have the chance of a lifetime. Dude, think about this for a second. Everybody sitting at home. You got a chance of a lifetime. You're a coach of an NFL team. You have the chance of a, generational wealth, all that stuff. And you're not going to read the fucking rule book? of the league you play in? Are you an idiot? Are you, like, what? That is literally the definition of a jabroni. Like, literally. Okay? The Titans' offense looked absolutely terrible. The offensive line, I would say it looked a little better than last year, only because it was so bad last year. But, I mean, Nick Bonito just whooped your ass, like, the entire game. Like, it was unbelievable. And Cam Ward, though, was throwing rockets. Like, absolute piss missiles all over the field. So, I like the Titans because I like how their defense played. I like how Cam played. But the rest of the damn situation, offensive supporting cast, coach is an idiot. Like, absolute jabroni. Number 27. Cleveland Browns. Cleveland played well in week 1, but that was somewhat expected, right? We had the gun-slinging old man aura of Joe Flacco at home. Nobody was walking into Cleveland without getting a fistful of Flacco right into the noggin, right into the jaw, uppercut, baby. Joe Flacco was going to bring it. Now, did he throw a couple picks? Absolutely. Did he also throw the ball 40 freaking times again? Pretty damn much. Joe Flacco dumping it off to Sampson, dumping it off to Fannin, and that's where I want to begin. Cleveland is the waiver wire team of the week. They're the fantasy darlings of week 1. I mean, wow. They found some weapons. They got Fannin, Sampson, Tillman going off. Right, Judy got his. Njoku's still there. I at least appreciate Kevin Stefanski for letting the gunslinger rip until his legs and his arm falls off, bro. So the Cleveland Browns are going to be one of those entertaining bad football teams. And on defense, they've got a defense. I mean, I'm not too surprised by that. Jim Schwartz usually puts on a show against Joe Burrow. And I think the Browns, like, held Joe Burrow and the Bengals to, like, 1 yard in, like, the last half of the game. Like, I don't know how many yards they had in the second half. Anyone want to let me know? Felt like they had 0. I don't know. Did they even move the ball? A yard? Myles Garrett was, wow. He just completely dominated a grown man for, like, 60 minutes. And Denzel Ward is an absolute dog. Like, I don't think people appreciate Denzel Ward enough. The Browns have a good defense. They got a really fun quarterback. And this is the thing about the Browns, bro. People think they're going to fall off when Flacco gets sat on the bench because they're 0-5. I'm telling you, Dylan Gabriel is going to get in there, and it's not going to look all that different. I'm letting you know now, okay, for fantasy purposes. At number 26, the New York Jets. I was actually impressed with the Jets. I gotta give a clap it up. I'm looking at you. You're not clapping. Clap. Jets. Wow. They have an offense. Maybe. I think. Possibly. At least they can run the ball. Breece Hall looked like Breece Hall. He was juking, jiving, dipping, ducking, dodging. He was looking nasty out there. Braylon Allen to complement in the future, I feel like didn't do much in the first game. Garrett Wilson absolutely, made Jalen Ramsey just go to basically anger management class. Basically the Jets made the Steelers look slow, made the Steelers look old, made the Steelers look like they need to go into a retirement home on defense. That's pretty much what it looked like. Justin Fields might have played the best game of his career, and they still lost, unfortunately. But I got to give credit to Fields where it's due. I'm not a Fields guy. You know that. If you've watched this channel for more than literally the last however many minutes I've been making this video, I'm not a Fields guy. But he deserves credit. He played really well in that game as a passer when he got the chance and as a runner for sure. And defensively, yeah, it was disappointing. You gave up, what? Like, damn near 40 points to Aaron Rodgers on half a foot? Like, what are we doing? That's not good. So, Aaron Glenn. Interesting. Aaron Glenn, defensive coach. More talent on defense on the Jets. Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner, Quincy Williams, Sherwood. Yeah, you even traded for Harrison Phillips, Jermaine Johnson. The list goes on. The Jets have talent on defense, yet they couldn't even stop maybe one of the worst offenses in the entire NFL. I don't know what's going on there. A little bit funky. So if the Jets coach actually coach the side of the ball that he's supposed to coach, they might be 1-0. But unfortunately, they were one of those teams that outplayed their opponent that actually lost. And it might have been due to their coach. Next, Chicago Bears at number 25. The Bears still absolutely suck. So, yeah, this seems low for the Bears, doesn't it? But if you watch the second half, you'd realize why they're here. Even if you watch the first half, man, I'm not buying it for 1 second. Caleb Williams stinks. I'm not buying it. He had one good drive. He ran well. He looked explosive as an athlete, but he did those things last year. He still can't read the field. It looks like guys are open and he just refuses to throw them the ball. When he does throw them the ball, especially when it's the second half and the game actually matters, he throws the ball like nowhere in their vicinity. The guy is the most inaccurate quarterback now that Anthony Richardson is on a bench somewhere that I've seen in the NFL. He has the most overthrows by like 15 since last year. He's booty cheek. Like he can't see, he can't read a defense, and he can't hit the receiver. Like, what good are you? Ben Johnson's going to have a Kyle Shanahan freak out one of these games. The offensive line looked better, but not like by a lot. I still felt like in the moments that mattered, they gave up some big pressure. And if Caleb did anything well, it was his ability to be elusive. I will say that. Their run game still sucks. I wonder why. They have freaking DeAndre Swift. Are we going to get another running back? Like, seriously? Rome Odunze, I mean, if Durkant's right about anything in his entire life, it's probably that Rome Odunze is not that good at football. So I will give him credit for that. Defensively, Chicago looked good early. Dennis Allen had some tricks up his sleeve. They made a young quarterback look like an inexperienced quarterback. And then as soon as they needed to make some stops, the losses of Jalen Johnson and TJ Edwards definitely showed up. So I'm not going to blame the Bears defense too much because they were literally without arguably their two best players. So that's tough. But, I mean, the Vikings had injuries too. But I picked the Vikings. I expect the Vikings to win because the Bears are just not that good at football. And Ben Johnson, I mean, after the first drive, didn't see much from him, to be fair. Number 24. Yeah, this is kind of depressing. I've got the New England Patriots at number 24. I think this is a fair ranking for my team because a lot of people, including myself, entering the season were very high on the Patriots, and meaning they would be in a competitive place to make the playoffs. I still believe they will be in that place, and I might go on to be wrong, and now is the time to probably make fun of me, okay? So if you want to make fun of me, go ahead. But I still believe in this team. And part of it is because they had so many new pieces in the first game. Like, as you guys know, I wasn't confident in the game itself. I wasn't confidently picking the Patriots. I didn't bet on the Patriots. Like, I wasn't sure about the Raider game. The Raiders had a lot of question marks. And the Patriots had a ton of question marks. 4 new offensive linemen, 2 rookies, right? A rookie running back, multiple new weapons and receivers, a new offensive coordinator, a young quarterback that's not even started an entire year with a new offensive system, new defensive linemen, new corners, new linebackers, like so much new. So losing week 1's not that surprising, especially when you consider as soon as the rain showed up, we were the far worse team. At halftime, the Patriots looked like the better team by a decent margin, actually. And that was before the rain took shape. Drake May was kind of scattershot after that and lacked that composure and confidence that we're used to seeing from the young man. I did not think this was Drake's best game. I think also, though, as I smack my mic in frustration, if you're blaming Drake for the loss, I don't think that's accurate. I will say that I don't think that he played that well up to the standard that I expect. But I would say that it wasn't his fault necessarily. I do think that, he could have played better for sure. The offensive line still looked like a work in progress. The run game was probably the most disappointing aspect of the Patriots overall. And defensively, they definitely missed Gonzo more than I would have thought. I mean, they gave up 60 yards through the air. I think Geno's leading the NFL in passing, maybe. Maybe. He's at least in the top 3. So, yeah, that was kind of embarrassing. But our pass rush looked very impressive at times. 4 sacks. We did turn the ball over a couple times. And our defense gave the Patriots enough chances to win this game offensively. We only allowed 20 points on defense. So it really came down to we weren't able to play that complementary style of football that Mike Vrabel is preaching for us, right? So I still have faith in this team. I feel like there's growing pains that are going to happen with this team. But if things start to go in the right direction with Drake, with the offense, with the weapons, with the defense, this team definitely has potential. So I'm not willing to write them off, but I'm also, I think it's fair that Geno doesn't write back to us either. At number 23, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Steelers and the Patriots are kind of debatable, in my opinion. The Steelers beat the Jets, which isn't all that impressive, but they did it on the road, and they did it with a new quarterback, and they did it with some new pieces on defense. I will say, the Steelers, I think I'm kind of counting on the Steelers to a certain degree to not play so terrible on defense for the rest of the year, but I certainly will say that this formula and this team will not work, at all, if the defense is this bad every week. This team will be a top 5 pick in the draft if they're allowing that many yards on the ground, if they're that terrible on defense, because they're not good enough on offense. They're not talented enough on offense to expect Aaron Rodgers to carry them or to throw 4 touchdowns every week, to be able to score all those points every week, right? I liked the blend of seeing the Arthur Smith stuff with the Aaron Rodgers stuff. I liked how they were able to utilize DK early. Shout out to Ben Skoranek for the big touchdown, and I think he also had a fumble recovery. Then on top of that, I didn't think their run game got going all that well. I think we need to see more of that to be sustainable. Felt like the offensive line was pretty bad. When I really think about it, the offense, it's weird that they scored that many points, because in my mind, it wasn't a offensive performance worthy of all the points they scored. And Chris Boswell nailed numerous field goals in this game from distance. But I think a bright spot is, Calvin Austin as a secondary receiver, seeing the different targets, Jalen Warren, Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth, DK Metcalf, all come together and do something. And then defensively, I think the presence that Jalen Ramsey brought, I thought the dog in him was impressive. The big hit he laid late in that game on Garrett Wilson to win the game, very impressive. The pass rush was lacking. The run defense was embarrassing. I'm sure they'll get back to the lab and do better. So I'm expecting better. But yeah, it's a bit of a hit and miss. They probably should have lost this game, in all fairness. At number 22, speaking of a team that should have won that lost, the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons, I think Ultra showed me a graphic where they were the most unlucky team in football this week that should have won. And I'm not that surprised because I picked the Falcons to win and they end up losing by a field goal late. And that's, the spread was 1. I'm not too surprised the Bucs won the game. But of course, the Falcons falconed. You know what I mean? They falconed. I will say the defense did put up a good fight and did actually, brutalize Baker a little bit in this game. I feel like the run defense certainly played very well against Bucky Irving, and that's impressive. Mike Evans was capped to a certain degree. Emeka Egbuka went off. He was the boogeyman against the Atlanta Falcons. But I think overall the Falcons defense showed some strides of promise. Without Tristan Wirfs, they were able to take advantage of that a little bit early on. Defensively, offensively against the Bucs defense, I feel like Penix had the up and downs that you would typically see. Him and Drake London felt like a little 50-50, felt like they weren't quite connecting all the time. Kyle Pitts had a good game. I'll say that. That's a promising note. No Darnell Mooney, and they were still able to chuck the ball around pretty well. Bijan didn't have an effective game on the ground against Tampa. That's not all that surprising, but extremely efficient through the air. Weirdly utilizing Tyler Algier more than I would have expected. Their offensive line did fine, even without McGarry there. So I think the Falcons are an interesting team. I need to kind of learn more about the Falcons because it definitely felt like a team that showed some good signs, but also not a good head coach. Like, feels like a team that could beat themselves pretty consistently. So at number 22, the Falcons. Number 21, the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals, I moved them down a couple spots because, you only beat the Saints by like a touchdown. I know it was on the road, but it was not that impressive. I expected the Cardinals to score near 30 points. That didn't happen. Yeah, I understand Kyler was sick and all that stuff, but I guess I just had higher expectations for the Cardinals. They didn't run the ball as well as they typically run the ball. Marvin Harrison had some good moments, and I'll give him that. But I just feel like, it wasn't that impressive. Defensively, I wasn't all that impressed. Like, I expected more from the pass rush. Will Johnson did get a pick, which was fun, and that's a big sign. Budda Baker was flying around and doing his thing. Baron Browning, I thought maybe had a good game there, but the Cardinals, they just felt like I wanted more from this performance. That's basically bottom line. Like, I wanted more from the Cardinals than what I got, which is why I kind of feel like they're a team that's mid, just not enough inspiration for me to move them much higher. Number 20, the Raiders. The Raiders clearly move up here, basically like swapping with the Patriots, essentially. The Raiders, they, in certain areas, looked better than I would have expected. Defensively, to be specific. I felt like their run defense was really good. Actually, Devin White played a really good game. I haven't said that in a long time, but Devin White played really well. He was super aggressive, super disruptive. He was all over the field. That was exciting to see, actually. Their safeties, I thought played pretty well. Their corners in the second half, I thought were very tight and feisty and nasty in coverage. And Max Crosby, definitely got after Drake May and wrecked Morgan Moses more than a couple times. So the defense definitely looked better than I would have assumed. The rain aided them, but I definitely feel like they were assignment sound, flying around, physical for sure. And that was surprising. Offensively, I thought that Trey Tucker and Dante Thornton, even if their stat lines weren't crazy, looked really credible and looked very threatening. Brock Bowers was Brock Bowers. Ashton Genty was a bit of a disappointment. I will say that. The offensive line was spotty. Geno, I thought, was very good, though. His accuracy was excellent. His toughness was excellent. In the big moments, he came through with big throws. And I'm sure Raiders fans are very excited for what Geno showcased to them. I think kind of proving in week one that he's better than Sam Darnold, probably proving that he was, the wrong idea for Seattle to move on from. So Raiders might have got them a gem there in Geno Smith. At number 19, the Indianapolis Colts, one of the most impressive teams and probably the most surprising dominant performance of week one. Absolutely diabolically just manipulating Miami into submission. Indianapolis, Danny Dimes, Indiana Jones, whatever you're calling him nowadays, the man looked dominant, okay? Running the ball, throwing the ball, executing an offense. Anthony Richardson, that's what a quarterback actually does. Hit the guy that's open. Maybe not chuck the ball 50 yards downfield every freaking pass attempt. And then defensively, loved the influence of Big Lou with this new personnel. I thought they were very creative. They added some flavor. They took Tua's main reads away. They frustrated Tyreek Hill. They didn't allow Miami to run the ball. And they suffocated the Miami offense. They sent blitzes. The Colts aren't known for that. I felt like the Colts just looked buttoned up on defense. I thought they looked creative on defense. I think offensively, they just executed. And the showcase of Ty Warren definitely shined. Michael Pittman had a strong game. So at number 19, the Colts, definitely a surprising team I'm going to keep my eye on. Number 18, Jacksonville. Another team that impressed. I will say that the film that I watched was not as impressive as the box score or as the result. I felt like their defense looked worse than the amount of points they allowed. They definitely still allowed Carolina to move the ball and matriculate the ball, but they got a little lucky in certain situations. They came up clutch with some turnovers. They came up big on some fourth downs. But overall, it felt like I still need to see more from Jacksonville, specifically defensively. Offensively, I wasn't that impressed with Lawrence, despite his stats and despite the overall offensive performance. I thought the bright lights of the offense came from the running game. I thought there was a lot of just diversity in the running game, from reverses to Brian Thomas to counters to pulling linemen, duo. Like, I felt like the Jags were running a lot of shit in the run game and everything was hitting. Like, all the big hits were just cued and just wrecking Carolina. Travis Etienne looked legit. Brenton Strange gave them something new to me. I'm looking forward to the rest of his season. Travis Hunter was a little underwhelming. I feel like I wanted a little bit more there, but I think it's coming. Also, Brian Thomas needs to be more involved, but, he did a decent amount. I just felt like Trevor was solid. He wasn't anything special, but I will say that's a good thing to say, because oftentimes when Trevor hasn't been good, they've lost games. So he was just fine. And maybe that's good enough now for them to be a good team or like a decent team. Number 17, Seattle. Seattle is really difficult for me to evaluate personally because I'm very high on San Francisco. So a lot of their failure and a lot of their disappointment is an extension of how good I think San Francisco is. Now, obviously, Seattle had the game at home, right? And they also, from a box score perspective, did get dominated. Like, they were dominated in almost every single stat. Like, other than turnover margin, pretty much. They were dominated, okay? And that's not good. Seattle's offense looked very uninspired. It looked a lot worse than I would have expected. Now, I expected the Niners' defense to look good, but I just felt like Seattle's offense, like, the run game was terrible. Their offensive line got no push. In the big moments in pass protection, they got absolutely bullied by Bosa. And the screen game was pathetic. Like, other than Jackson Smith and Jigba, their offense literally didn't exist. Like, their entire offense in this game was JSN. Basically. Sam Darnold, I don't even know how to evaluate his performance, to be honest. Defensively, I thought that they may have given up yards and first downs, but I still came away believing that they're a top-notch defense because situationally they were excellent. I felt like they were extremely physical, fast, and even a lot of the plays by the Niners that were made were just really good plays by the Niners. Like, so it wasn't so much that Seattle looked bad as a defense or gave up huge gaping openings. It was more so that the Niners just made a lot of plays, and give that unit credit, right? That being said, if Seattle is as good defensively as you would hope, in a game where Kittle gets injured, no Ayuk, Jennings gets injured, you would hope that you could win that game for your team. And they did fail in the big moment. So at number 17, Seattle. Number 16, Minnesota. Minnesota and Seattle, I came away with similar feelings. Two defenses that I think are very good, but not quite elite. And offenses that I feel like will be very spotty and a little bit of a roller coaster throughout the year. Now, the Vikings do have the benefit of the doubt because they're getting Christian Darrisaw back. They're getting Jordan Addison back. And eventually, they did take off and score quite a few points. And that can't be said about Seattle. Okay? But, J.J. McCarthy, I felt like, for the most part, was not great in the game. In the fourth quarter, I felt like he played well. And he definitely showcased his resiliency, his leadership, his hunger, his heart. All those things I have to applaud for J.J. McCarthy. I really like that out of a quarterback, okay? But for the, early portions of the game, I felt like it was like he looked lost, he looked inexperienced, he looked, just a little bit indecisive. And I do think a lot of that came down as well to Kevin O'Connell's decision-making with the scripting of the game, with the play calling of the game, with the conservative nature of his plan. And he needed to kind of unleash McCarthy. And it only ended up happening when they were down 2 scores. And then McCarthy started to gain some confidence. I will say I thought the Vikings run game got going as well. Jordan Mason looked good. I think he should be their main ball carrier. Aaron Jones had some big plays. Justin Jefferson still kind of feel like relatively quiet for his standards. TJ Hawkinson didn't do much. They really did miss Addison here. Thielen looked not good. Defensively, it was a bit on and off, a bit hit and miss. I felt like there was really good pressure at times. I felt like when they needed to in the second half, their run defense was stellar. That was maybe the highlight for me, was their run defense. And also, why does any team throw a screen in the direction of Andrew Van Ginkel? I will never understand. But to me, the secondary looked very deficient. It looked very spotty. I felt like if Caleb would have just hit the target on a number of his throws, he might have had 350, 400 yards. If he would have just hit the guy that was open, honestly. So Ben Johnson gave him the keys, gave him the answers to the test, and he still couldn't answer the test. That's kind of where I'm a little worried about the Vikings, is the combination of a leaky secondary with a quarterback that's probably going to have some roller coaster elements. So at number 16, the Vikings. At number 15, Tampa Bay. Tampa moves down. Some of this is due to the injuries, and some of this is due to that I feel like they were outplayed by the Falcons. But again, a lot of that is due to the injuries, right? Not having Tristan Wirfs, not having Chris Godwin on offense. And they struggled early because of that. And, not having McMillan, all that stuff. But overall, I think the Vikings and the Bucs look kind of mid. They look like dangerous teams that could really play with anybody, but they also feel like a capped team. Both of these teams feel rather capped to me. The Bucs, just from a coaching standpoint, they felt uninspired offensively for much of the game. Their run game was clearly not the same as last year. Their offensive line, you felt the loss of Tristan Wirfs, even against a defense that I'm not that high on in the Falcons. So I want to say that. And defensively, the Bucs still had some leaky issues in the pass game. They were dominant in the run game, but it's hard to evaluate the Bucs because they generally struggle with the Falcons. So this is one of those things like the Bengals. I'm going to talk about the Bengals. Is they won the game against a team that they typically struggle against, but they did struggle, and they both should have lost. What do we take away from that? So I'm trying not too much to move away from my previous future of what I think this team is, but at the same time, I have to give a little bit of negative here. So at number 15, the Bucs. At number 14, Dallas. So this is about as high that I can move a team, 10 spots from 24 to 14. Pre-Micah trade or post-Micah trade, but right after the Micah trade with the in-moment reaction to then the Dallas Cowboys of seeing them go toe-to-toe with the best team in football from last year, the Philadelphia Eagles, in an opener on the road. So what I loved about Dallas, first of all, is their offense is legit. They're going to move the ball, and they're going to score on a lot of teams. Because Dak looked like 2023 Dak. CD looked unstoppable. George Pickens will only get more involved. He looked the part without being statistically productive, if that makes sense. Turpin adds an element. I thought their run game was more diverse and creative. Javonte showed a little bit of something. I think Jaden Blue needs to play. Offensive line also looked much better than I would have expected in that game. So the Cowboys have a real offense. Defensively, it took them some time to settle in, but I felt like their defensive front started to take over the game at one point, and I felt like they had a really good rotation. They were holding Saquon. Their secondary looked really good, and they limited A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert to very little damage. Jalen Hurts only really hit one big play down the field, and it was to Jahan Dotson of all people. So I give them credit for that. If they learned how to contain a quarterback in the pocket and had better linebackers, this defense could be something that we're not expecting. So Dallas kind of looked like a playoff team. I know they lost, but they easily could have won. Lamb drops a couple passes on big plays. They fumble the ball in the red zone. Those things don't happen. We're talking about Dallas as a top 10 team, I think. So I have them at number 14. At number 13, Denver. Talk about a tough evaluation. So Denver, I had as a top 10 team previous to my last, in my last power ranking, previous to this one. And now I have them at 13 because I thought Bo Nix played really bad for the most part. Like, he had probably, I don't know the stats. He probably had 6 turnover-worthy plays. He threw 2 picks, I think, straight to the other team. He looked like a quarterback, kind of like Tua when Tua plays bad. He looked like a quarterback that predetermined where he was going to go with the ball and threw it there no matter what. You know when you play Madden and you're just staring down a receiver the entire play because you think he's going to be open against that coverage, and you're like, it's not open, I threw it anyways, and I was picked off, and I'm an idiot? Yeah, that's Bo Nix in this game, pretty much to a T. The guy was just staring down his first read or staring down the guy he thought would be open, and it just was never open, and he would just throw it to the other team, or it would almost be a pick, or it'd be a terrible throw. And then he's trying to make miraculous plays outside the pocket, throwing the ball across his body, all this stuff. He looked terrible for much of the game. The offensive line was a really big downgrade from what we saw last year. They were dominated on the inside against Jeffrey Simmons in particular. That was depressing. I thought their run game looked really good, though, in aspects. Dobbins and Harvey both had moments. Harvey had some home runs, and Sutton looked good. I feel like still, though, we didn't get much from the other weapons at receiver, expecting more. Defensively, they looked dominant. So this is where I ranked them at 13. Defensively, they had every reason to lose this game. Denver's defense had every reason to lay down. And Denver's defense kept them in this game and won them this game. The amount of times they got a turnover, the amount of times they got a big sack, the amount of times they forced the Titans out of field goal range, they were really good. And their front seven dominated. I thought that Nick Bonito was incredible. Cooper played a good game. Felt like Allen had an impact. Hufanga was flying around. And overall, I just felt like Denver's defense lived up to expectations. But their offense looked like it took a step back, with the Titans really honing in on what Bo Nix wanted to do. So at number 13, some concerning elements here, but their defense is so good that they're going to keep them in pretty much every game. At number 12, Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati did not play like the 12th best team by a long shot, but one thing I can say about Cincinnati is they won the game. And one thing I can say about Cincinnati is they typically do not win in week 1. Cleveland is a team they typically do struggle against, and typically it is very ugly against. So I give them a pass to a certain degree for that. But I do give them credit for winning, and winning in fashion that they didn't win last year. Winning due to defense, pretty much. Winning due to some forced turnovers, some big play defense at the right time in the right moment. Some big interceptions by DJ Turner and company. Some great run defense by TJ Slayton and company. Some pressure by Trey Hendrickson. And I thought, the defense did not play great. They certainly gave up yards. They gave up a ton of long drives, possession, all that sort of stuff. But in the biggest moments, they came through with the plays they needed to, which last year they didn't do that. So I do give them credit for that. Offensively, it was disgusting. Their protection was bad. It felt like Jamar Chase couldn't get going. Felt like the Browns dominated up front. They were able to, really frustrate Joe Burrow, and Burrow played it rather conservatively in this game, honestly. So I need to see more out of that electrifying offense. I need to see it get back on track against Jacksonville. I have a feeling it will. But the defense, Not great, but I will say, inspired by the effort at the right time. At number 11, Houston. Houston is a lot like Denver. Defensive team that is dynamite on that side of the ball. Offensively frustrating. And I think it could be the theme for both. To me, the Texans have a little bit more in the passing game because they have the better quarterback. They probably have better receivers. But the Broncos have more of a running game because of the offensive line. And maybe a hint more consistency, but I feel like the Texans have more of a high upside. I will say I'm high on the Rams defense. So I don't want to be too critical for the Texans offensively because I do like the Rams defense, specifically at home. And I did say entering the game, it was a bad matchup for the Texans offense without Christian Kirk and against that front, which is one of the best pass rushes in football. So there were frustrating elements though. You know, too much pressure on CJ Stroud. I felt like not enough Nico Collins and really not enough from the running game. So I want to see more from that Texans offense. Nick Caley as he continues to coach this unit. I thought CJ really played well early on, and it felt like he got unsettled as the game went on. Defensively, though, they looked every bit of the best defense in the NFL like I thought. They absolutely wrecked the offensive line of the Rams. They got after Stafford. Stafford was darn near perfect in the game, and the Texans only allowed 14 points. That's really impressive, right? I thought that Will Anderson was phenomenal. You know, Stingley was down at a time. I think he came back, but I thought that, you know, the Texans just were flying around, and they were ferocious, and they were every bit of the defense I expected. So I have them at number 11. Number 10, entering the top 10, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs, I don't know what to do with this team. I feel like from a talent vantage point, they're not even belonging at this spot. It felt like they were like not even the same team as last year from a talent perspective, specifically on defense. They felt slow. It felt like they couldn't cover. It felt like they couldn't get after the quarterback. It felt like Herbert had all the time in the world. It felt like Quentin Johnston was making their corners look like bums, which is not a good thing. And then offensively, when they lost Worthy, they just had zero speed, zero explosiveness, zero reliability in the receiving core, and they just had very little on offense outside of Andy Reid scheming everything up. Travis Kelce looks washed. Hollywood Brown just like is not a number one. And moving forward, I am very kind of concerned about the makeup of the Chiefs because I was expecting defense to maybe take a step back, offense to take a step forward. But now that Worthy is out and Rice is out, this team is going to struggle to move the ball and score. And I thought Mahomes looked the best he looked in like a while. Even though he was a little scattershot and a little inaccurate, I felt like he had a lot of big-time throws and a lot of big-time playmaking plays and some good scrambles, and that kind of overcame his inconsistency. But overall, like, the defense looks so bad. I'm hoping that they look better. Like, the defensive front looked old. It looked slow. It looked uninspired. Chris Jones didn't look like the same guy. Like, Drew Tranquill was their best defensive player. I don't really know what that says about your defense. So at number 10, I have the Chiefs. I moved them down for good reason. At number 9, another team that looked kind of disgusting, Detroit. I will say, I feel like people are overreacting to Detroit to a certain degree. You know, went back, watched that entire game. And I felt like Detroit was much more in that game than people give them credit for, especially early. Like, they get a field goal early. They should have had at least another field goal, but Jared Goff throws a pick. They had was it a fourth down that they failed? I can't quite remember. Oh, then Brian Branch had a pick that was reversed. That could have put them in great position to come back in the game. So there was some eventful things that didn't quite go their way, that could have gone their way, that could have turned the tide of the game. And their defense, I did feel like played well. After like the first quarter, I felt like the defense settled in after Matt LaFleur's script, and they played pretty damn well. They didn't really allow Josh Jacobs to run all over them, and they did play sticky in coverage and didn't allow those big plays that they were allowing early in the game. But the pass rush is a real concern against good offensive lines. It was non-existent against the Packers. Their offensive creativity, their layering of their play calls, their preparation of their offense, Jared Goff having the answers to the test, None of that was there like it felt like in 2023 or 2024 with Ben Johnson. Felt entirely different. The offensive line got bullied, specifically inside. Even Penei Sewell had a really rough game against Micah Parsons. But I will say, the Packers are one of the top teams in the NFL, my NFC Super Bowl pick, okay? And I think their defense is legit now. So I will give them a bit of a pass for having to play on the road against a divisional opponent that knows them extremely well without their coordinators from last year. And, look, a lot of teams would have lost that game, okay? So I kind of understand it to a certain degree. So at number 9, I have the Detroit Lions, still willing to give them some wiggle room, some leeway. Not too surprised they lost to the Packers at Lambeau Field. At number 8, the Washington Commanders. Commanders have not been this high for me all offseason long. I put them here to start the year, and I kind of did say that I wouldn't be surprised if the Commanders started the year well. I will say I think a lot of their performance does have to do with the Giants, specifically their defensive performance. Russell Wilson, as I've mentioned, is washed. The offensive line of the Giants is atrocious, and they really only have Malik Neighbors. So I'm not surprised their defense held their own and played well, specifically at home. So I need to see Green Bay or a decent enough offense to give them a test. But offensively, even against the Giants defense that, sure, held them to 21, they still moved the ball extremely well. They still put up a ton of yards. They hit explosives in the run game. Debo looked like a great secondary piece. Bill looked phenomenal. Jaden looked composed, even if he wasn't perfect. And Terry McLaurin looked a little off. But other than that, I felt like the Commanders' offense looked like last year. And it looked like where it left off. So that is a very high floor for this team, is that offense going out there and putting up potentially 30 in any given game. So at number 8, I have the Commanders. Number 7, the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers are tough to evaluate because how much stock do I put into their injuries? How much stock do I kind of not put into their injuries? How much do I look at the team that is right now and the team that it could be? So that's the difficulty with the 49ers. But I thought they were the second most impressive NFC team I watched this week, only behind Green Bay. I felt like Brock Purdy, he did throw the 2 egregious interceptions, but outside of that, I felt like against an elite defense or a very close to elite defense on the road in one of the most hostile, loud environments in the NFL, I felt like Purdy played very accurate, very fast, very decisive, and I felt like he played well. The offensive line, for some reason, gets a really bad rap from 49ers fans on Twitter and stuff, but I thought it played well. What do you expect against Seattle's front? I don't know exactly what people expect at times, but I thought that it looked pretty good. Their run game was as expected. I felt like consistency was there, but maybe the explosiveness wasn't quite there as we typically see. But again, Seattle deserves credit for their defense. Mike McDonald has a job for a reason. Leonard Williams is a freaking dog. You know what I mean? And they were suffering injuries to Dominic Pooney and Trent Williams and Jawan Jennings and George Kittle. And it's like they still were able to beat a team that a lot of people had making the playoffs. That's pretty impressive on the road, right? McCaffrey, inspiringly so, looked phenomenal in the passing game. I think he led the team in catches, if I'm not mistaken. Ricky Pearsall had another breakout game. He actually leads the NFL over the past 3 games in receiving yards. So he's for real. Defensively, wow. I just feel like it's everything that I've been talking about with the 49ers. This was, to me, the biggest breath of fresh air for the 49ers. I've been preaching how I feel like the 49ers defense the last 2 years has not been living up to the level of talent, not been living up to expectation, not been living up to their name. And in this game, this was one of the best defensive performances they've had in so long. From the pressure on third down, to the coverage, to the run defense, to the big plays when they needed it, the fumble, multiple fumbles actually. I feel like the 49ers defense is going to be top 10 this year after that performance of what I saw. Robert Saleh had some timely blitzes. I felt like they were well coordinated. And some of their younger players shined, including their safety Siegel. And then also, I felt like Upton Stout, maybe had a couple bad moments, but I felt like played pretty well. And D. Winters, I've been saying for years at this point, the guy's a good player and finally got his opportunity and he shined. So 49ers firmly in the top 10, but their ceiling is dictated by health. Unfortunately, we don't really know how healthy they are. It's going to depend on the week. So I have them at number 7. At number 6, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams won a game that pretty much went the way I expected. So I can't really give them negatives per se. Yeah, they only scored 14 points, but it was against the Texans, and they certainly could have scored more based on the way the game went. And I thought Stafford, I think the biggest, most inspiring aspect is Stafford was literally the highest graded quarterback of the week by PFF, played a damn near perfect game, looked spectacular given the concern about his back. Puka Nacua, once again, proving that he is an absolute fucking dog. Then you have Devontae Adams, who was a good compliment, yet to see his real shining moments. Again, it's against the Texans. The offensive line didn't look great, but again, it's against the Texans. It was at home, so maybe you could say they should have started the game better, I guess. You could make an argument. They did take a while to settle in, but they like to play these close games, these Rams. Defensively, though, they lived up to my expectation. I have high expectations for this defense, and they dominated a unit that I think is pretty average. And they definitely exposed the matchup they should have exposed, which is their front against the offensive line of the Texans. And that's why they won the game. So at number 6, I have the Rams. I definitely feel they're an NFC contender. Number 5, the Chargers. Tune up the band, baby. Strike the Chiefs down. The Chargers. Justin Herbert, baby. Justin Herbert, Madison Beer. Hand this man a beer. I mean, my goodness, was that performance sexy as shit. Holy. Keenan Allen, you old-ass, fine gentleman. Quentin Johnston, credit to you for 2 tutties. Ladd McConkey still did his thing. The only uninspiring aspect of the Chargers from an offensive standpoint was their first-round pick was just meh. One-eyed Najee was out there trying to do his thing, defensively. I thought, the thing about the Chargers defense, they're always in the right place. They're always in the right spot at the right time. They're very physical. They're very fast. They play with a lot of energy. Henley's phenomenal. Derwin James is phenomenal. Tart played a great game. But they just feel like they're lacking some extra spice or something with the talent. So that's maybe what separates them from the really, really good teams, but I actually most inspired by the fact that they looked like a team with actual weapons. That's the biggest thing I can say about the Chargers, is they looked like a team with actual weapons, all right? Next, number 4, the Philadelphia Eagles. I was not impressed by the Eagles, so I moved them back a spot, okay, or 2. The Eagles' defense is mostly what discouraged me from the vantage point of very little pressure. Now, I understand Jalen Carter spat on somebody early in the game, and he's their best defensive player. I get that, but still, I felt like Dak had a freaking birthday party in the backfield the entire game. Javonte ripped them up. And I felt like their secondary couldn't cover those receivers. I was concerned. Their linebackers, though, might be the saving grace. Phenomenal stuff from the rookie Campbell and from Zach Bond, who's getting better or something. Offensively, Saquon, I'm a little scared about the regression, and I'm a little scared about the Madden curse. I'm not going to lie. I think they traded for Tank Bigsby for a reason. Offensive line, phenomenal. Still looked like the best in football from all the teams I watched. And through the air, Jalen was very conservative, and he dinked and dunked his way and tush-pushed his way to first downs. Fair enough. it was efficient enough. I just felt like they weren't dominant. I felt like they weren't as good as last year. I felt like they had more holes and they looked human. Maybe that's the biggest thing. My biggest takeaway. At number 3, the Green Bay Packers. The Packers looked like a Super Bowl team in the NFC. Their pass rush looked maybe the most impressive of any team I watched. Their pass rush, Texans, Broncos, but Packers on a short list. Lucas Van Ness from the interior was shredding the Lions. Devontae Wyatt looked good. Rashawn Gary looked like a depoy. And Micah Parsons immediately brought energy, passion, and just absolute whoop-ass to the Green Bay Packers defense. Their linebackers and their second level looked incredibly fast. Felt like the Lions couldn't ever even get the ball downfield with how much their offensive line was getting penetrated and just dismantled. And it felt like the corners of the Packers were never, ever, ever even in jeopardy of giving up a play. It's weird to say. Their safeties are also fantastic. So that defense inspires me. On the other side, their run game is very good. And their play design is very good. And Jordan Love, I think, played well. He didn't have to do a lot. And it felt like after the first couple drives, he didn't really have to do much. But I feel like he made some nice throws down the field. I would like him to just take a check down every once in a while. It feels like he's too aggressive. But that's the entire offense. I do wonder if they can get Golden more involved. That was a little bit weird. And then also, Christian Watson just got paid. Congratulations to C-Dub. Congratulations to Christian Watson. He's going to be a guy when he comes back. And that amount of speed is going to be pretty fantastic. Tucker Kraft is everything I thought he was. The offensive line is maybe my biggest takeaway. The offensive line looked dominant. That's another one where they looked like maybe the second best offensive line in football. So if you're talking about a top 3 D line and a top 2 O line or top 3 O line, Buffalo is really good too, then that's a Super Bowl team. That's a really good roster right there. So then we get to the top 2. Okay. Not New Orleans. Okay. What are you guys doing? Okay. What are you guys doing? The New Orleans Saints. What are we doing here, bro? What are we doing with the New Orleans Saints? So we watched an epic game, okay? We watched an epic game between the 2 best teams in football, in my opinion, okay? And the 2 best teams in football are the teams that played on Sunday night. The Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. Those are the 2 best teams in football. Nobody can tell me otherwise. The Ravens dominated that game in Buffalo for about 54 minutes. And then what happened? Superman overcame the super team, as I've said. Right? At number 2, I have the Ravens. I could make an argument they're the most complete team, but they failed to win the game. Okay? Their defense, I will say, as good as Josh Allen is, and as good as the Bills' offensive line is, I expected more out of that defense in the third and fourth quarter. I expected them to be able to close that out. With the secondary names you have, with 5 first-round picks or whatever the stat is, and the addition of Mike Green and having Justin Madubuike, Kyle Van Noy, all these guys, Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, Jair, you got to be able to get some stops, even against Josh Allen, even against the superhuman Josh Allen. You got to be able to make some plays. So that was the biggest, most egregious element of that game. But the offense, man, looks like a fucking monster. Zay Flowers looks even better. Mark Andrews looked good. Lamar looked fantastic when he actually had a chance to throw. That scramble was epic. The O-line looked pretty good overall, especially in the run game. Derrick Henry looked faster. The guy gets faster with age. But they look like a bunch of bullies, dude. The Ravens looked like a absolute behemoth until the fourth quarter. And then at number 1, Buffalo. They have the best player in football. That's undisputed at this point, guys. The offensive line, I think, is the second best. I think I would put Buffalo second and Green Bay third. Their run game is good. I mean, Baltimore might have the best run defense in football, and Buffalo still ran the ball a little bit. They just kind of got out of a situation where they could. James Cook's fantastic. I felt like Shakir looked decent. I felt like Coleman really shined. Big breakout season ahead. Palmer made some plays. He's better than Mac Hollins. I think the offense is literally better than last year, and it was arguably the best in football last year. So that is a big, big thing. If Buffalo's even better on offense now, that's pretty fun. Defensively, they got to figure out their 2-point plays, though. I will say that. Defensively, still uninspiring, still a little scary against elite competition. I do wonder how much of it is the matchup against Baltimore. I do wonder how much of it is just Lamar and Derrick Henry. But at the same time, I have to say, like, you got to be better. You got to be more prepared. I know that they have some guys suspended in the front seven. I know they had some guys injured in the secondary. I expect them to get faster in the secondary. I hope they make some deals at the deadline to put them over the top, because that's really the only thing people are missing at this point, is this team is missing to be a champion, to be honest. McDermott, good on you. I just need to see a little bit better of your defensive performance against Lamar and Mahomes. Let's figure that out, okay? But other than that, number one, Buffalo for sure. That is my power rankings. Week 1. My thoughts on every team entering week 2. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, like the video. Don't be a jabroni and subscribe. Weekly NFL Power Rankings on the BLV. See you next time. Deuces.